Hi, fourth grade. It's me, Miss Belts, and we are going to work on math again today, and I hope you're so excited. So let's get started. Today, we are going to solve with fluency one-step problems involving multiplication. How are we going to do this? Well, we're going to review important vocabulary. We're going to represent word problems with a strip diagram, equation. We're going to use an estimate, and we're going to solve with partial products. And why are we going to do this? Well, it's important to be able to solve multiplication problems with partial products so that we're able to see the value that is actually being multiplied. So let's look at our important vocabulary. This week we have 4 important vocabulary words. The first one is multiplication. When we multiply, we are combining equal amounts. So in this one, we're doing 3 in each group, and there are 4 groups. So 3 plus 3 plus 3 for repeated addition. Or there are 4 groups of 3. Remember that multiplication sign, that X means groups of. The next word we have is product. Our product is the answer to a multiplication problem. The next one we have is factor. Factors are the numbers that we are actually multiplying. So in this example, 3 times 7, 3 and 7 are our factors. The last word we have is strip diagram. And when we have a strip diagram, it is a visual to represent a problem. So for this one, it matches this multiplication sentence, and there are 4 groups of 3. So let's get started with our examples. Here is our first example. It says that Nora has 8 bags of candy. There are 225 pieces of candy in each bag. How many pieces of candy does Nora have in all? Now remember, the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to read the problem again and find all of our important information. So let's do that. Nora has 8 bags of candy. Well, that's important, so I'm going to highlight it. There are 225 pieces of candy in each bag. That's important to know also. How many pieces of candy does Nora have in all? That's what I'm trying to figure out. So I'm going to use this information to create my strip diagram. So I know I am looking for how many pieces of candy does Nora have in all. I know there are 8 bags of candy, and there are 225 pieces of candy in each bag. So when I make my strip diagram, that's exactly what it shows. I'm looking for how many pieces of candy there are. I have 8 bags. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Each one has 225 pieces inside of it. So now I have to write my equation. So if I look at this, there's a couple of things I could do to solve it. I'm going to use multiplication to help me. So I'm going to say 8 groups of 225 equals the total pieces of candy. After I've done my equation, I'm going to do an estimate. I'm going to see what my answer is going to be close to. So I'm going to try to solve for 8 times 225. Well, 225 is an okay number, but I think I could make it a little more friendly. So instead of 225, I'm actually going to do 8 times 200 because that's an easier number for me to work with. I'm going to set up my partial products. Remember, when we do partial products, we break our number into place value into expanded form. So I'm doing 8 times 200, but I'm breaking it into expanded form. So I have 200 plus 0 plus 0. Excuse me. Now, I always like to write down the problem I'm trying to solve for so I remember what I'm doing. So 8 times 200 is going here. 8 times 0 is going in this box, and 8 times 0 is going in this box. Now I'm actually going to solve it. So 8 times 200 is 1,600. 8 times 0 is 0 because I know anything times 0 is 0. And 8 times 0 is still 0. Now remember, what I'm going to do after that is I'm going to actually solve all of these. That's where the partial products comes in, because this is partially what I'm doing. So I'm going to do 1,600 plus 0 plus 0. Well, whenever I add things plus 0, the number is going to stay the same. So I know my estimate is going to be close to 1,600. So when I solve, I'm going to see if it's close to that number. So let's actually solve this problem. So I'm going to actually do 8 times 225. Again, I have my 8 on this side, and I'm going to break my 225 into its place value, so breaking it into expanded form. When I break it into expanded form, this is 200 plus 20 plus 5. Again, I like to actually write what I'm going to solve inside of each box. So in this box, I'm solving for 8 times 200. In this box, I'm doing 8 times 20. In this box, I'm doing 8 times 5. Now when I do that, 8 times 200 is 1,600. 8 times 20 is 160. And 8 times 5 is 40. And I actually wrote down each of those numbers here. Now, this is where we can all do things differently. I'm going to actually use expanded form to help me solve this problem because I don't know how to add 1,600 plus 160 plus 40. So I'm going to break it apart because it makes it easier for me. Well, I'm going to start with the smallest place value first, which is my tens place. So I'm actually going to add 60 plus 40. Well, I know that 60 plus 40 equals 100. Then I'm going to add all of my hundreds. So I'm going to add 600 plus 100 plus 100. Well, that's 800. And then the last thing I have to do is just add 1,000 plus 800. Well, I know that 1,000 plus 800 is 1,800. So that means that Nora has 1,800 total pieces of candy. And remember, it's important to check our answer with our estimate. Now remember, I said my estimate was going to be 1,600 and my total was 1,800. That's pretty close together, so I think that I did it correctly. Let's look at another problem. So if you'll notice, this one's a little more difficult, but I know that we can figure it out. Here's what it says. Gabe has 6 Minecraft books. There are 1,342 pages in each book. How many pages are there in all 6 books combined? Gabe really likes to read. That's awesome. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read the problem again and I'm going to highlight for any important information. So let's do that. Gabe has 6 Minecraft books. That's pretty important, so I'm going to highlight it. There are 1,342 pages in each book. Also important, so I'm going to highlight it. How many pages are there in all 6 books combined? Well, that's what I'm looking for, so I'm definitely going to highlight that. This is going to be the information that I use to build my strip diagram. So let's think about what my strip diagram would look like. On this one, I have 6 Minecraft books. So here's book 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Each book has 1,342 pages, and I am looking for the total number of pages in all of the books. After I've done that, I'm going to write my equation. Now remember, this multiplication sign means groups of, so I have 6 groups of 1,342, and that's going to give me my total number of pages in all of the books. Now I'm going to use this information, and I'm going to actually do my estimate. So I'm going to go ahead and keep my 6 the same because that's a pretty easy number to use. But 1,342, not so easy. So I'm going to use 1,000. So 6 times 1,000, and it's going to give me my total number of pages because it's an easier number to use. Again, I'm going to set up my partial product. Remember, with partial product, we actually break it into expanded form. So for 1,000, it's 1,000 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0. Remember, again, I like to write the numbers inside of each box that I'm going to solve for. So I'm going to do 6 times 1,000, 6 times 0, 6 times 0, and 6 times 0. After I actually write what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually solve. So when I solve, 6 times 1,000 is 6,000. 6 times 0 is 0 because I know anything times 0 is 0. 6 times 0 again is still 0, and 6 times 0 is, that's right, 0. After I have multiplied all of them, I'm going to add. So 6,000 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 is 6,000. So I know my answer is going to be somewhere around 6,000 pages. So now I'm actually going to solve my problem. So the problem I'm trying to solve is 6 groups of 1,342, and that's going to give me my total number of pages in all of the books. Well, 1,342 is a little bit bigger of a number, so I'm going to use partial products to help me, and I'm going to break it into expanded form. So 1,342 is 1,000 plus 300 plus 40 plus 2. Now remember, I like to write the numbers that I'm going to solve for in each box. So 6 times 1,000 goes here, 6 times 300 is here, 6 times 40, and then finally 6 times 2. And I'm actually going to solve each of those. So 6 times 1,000 is 6,000, 6 times 300 is 1,800, 6 times 40 is 240, and 6 times 2 is 12. Now, when I'm trying to solve for my problem, when I'm trying to solve for my answer, I'm going to add all of these together. So I have 6,000 plus 1,800 plus 240 plus 12. Now remember, I like to break it into expanded form because that helps me to group things together. So you can see that I did that. So 6,000 plus 1,800, there's that 1,800 right there, plus 240, there's that 240, plus 12, which is right there. I'm going to start with my smallest place value. Well, I don't have any ones to add, so the 2 is going to stay by itself, so then I move to my tens place. I'm going to add 10 plus 40. I know that 10 plus 40 is 50, so I write that down here. Then I'm going to move to my next one, so I'm going to move to my hundreds. So now I'm going to add 200 plus 800. Well, I know 200 plus 800 is 1,000. Finally, I'm going to do all of my thousands. So I'm going to add 6,000 plus 1,000 plus 1,000. Well, when I do that, it gives me 8,000. And finally, I'm going to add all of the pieces together. So I'm going to do 8,000 plus 50 plus 2. And when I do that, it gives me an answer of 8,052 pages. So in all 6 of those books, there were 8,052 pages. Now remember, the way I check my work is by comparing it to my estimate. So 6,000 and 8,052, those are pretty close whenever you're talking about thousands. So I know I did my work correctly. So let's review what we talked about today. Today we talked about solving with fluency one-step multiplication problems. We reviewed our important vocabulary. We represented word problems with a strip diagram, equation, estimate, and we solved with partial products, and then we checked our answers with our estimate to make sure it was reasonable. And we did this because it's important to be able to solve multiplication problems with partial products so we're able to see the value that is being multiplied. Now it is going to be your turn. You are going to solve 2 word problems, and you're going to do the same exact thing we just did. You're going to represent the problem with the strip diagram, you're going to write an equation, you're going to estimate your product, you're going to solve using partial product, and then you're going to check your answer with your estimate to make sure it was reasonable. If you have any questions, let your teacher know. Bye, I'll see you next week.